Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to my honorable colleagues, to those in chamber with us this afternoon, to all of our residents, our neighbors, our friends watching on whatever platform. I'm not repeating myself. His Honor, the Mayor is with fellow North Carolinians still in Chicago, participating in the Democratic National Convention. We wish him well in accordance with statute and our charter. As Mayor Pro Tem, I'll be assuming the gavels today for our work session, and I'd like to call this work session to order. Again, thank you to my honorable colleagues and staff. Good to see you all. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Certainly. Mayor Williams has received an excused absence for today. Mayor Pro Tem Middleton.
Here.
Councilmember Baker.
Here.
Councilmember Caballero.
Here.
Councilmember Cook.
Here.
Councilmember Freeman.
Present.
Councilmember Rist.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. At this time, I'm going to yield to my honorable colleagues for any announcements that they may have, and we'll go around the horseshoe. Councilmember Cook, good afternoon. Councilmember Baker. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. No announcements in particular, but I've been having good conversations with staff, colleagues, and members of the community about street safety. As we know, the two biggest killers in our city are gun violence, which we'll receive a report on later this meeting, and traffic violence. We lose 2 to 3 times the number of pedestrians in our city per capita as our peers in other parts of the world. We know that there's a variety of reasons for this. And part of that is land use and part of that is street design. And so I want us to make sure that we're being careful and thoughtful about our street designs. And I think that there are some ways that we can tackle it. 2 budgets ago, the City Council funded the Vision Zero coordinator, who's been doing fabulous work with the City of Durham. And I think that there's some low-hanging fruit as well as some higher-reaching objectives that we can embark on here at City Council. Part of that, I want to explore a resolution that further solidifies our guidelines for NACTO, National Association of City and Transportation Officials. I'm not going to bring that forward or try and place that on the agenda for the next work session, but I want to bring that up and continue to have this conversation with each of you and keep moving the ball forward on street design. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Caballero, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good to see everyone today. I'm eagerly awaiting the presence of siren.
I think siren's in the back of the room.
Okay, so at some point, so that's really important. I'm just gonna stop talking. Oh, hellos. Very sweet dog. Kind of made my day. I wanted to say thank you to the students and children who participated in Camp Destiny, who came to visit us this morning in City Hall. There were about 8 to 11-year-olds who attend Burton Elementary School normally. They were excellent, so respectful, and they had a lot of fun, all getting to take turns to be mayor for a little bit. So that was just wanted to shout them out because they were really great guests today. And then finally, council colleagues, I may have to leave between 3 or 3:30 to go pick up a vehicle at the mechanic. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Freeman, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I just want to share that tonight we're having the town hall at WD Hill. Just make sure I share a reminder. Looks like I had a little snafu with the email for city council only versus city council at Durham NC. So just making sure that you're all aware of that. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Rist, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem. Nothing at this time. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I'm not going to make any announcements, but I'm going to take this point of gavel's privilege and yield for a minute. I'll use my announcements. Chief, if you'd like to have either you or the handler introduce our special guest that's in chamber today, so we can go ahead and pay attention to the rest of the meeting because everybody's kind of focused on the pooch.
Good afternoon, council. It is my pleasure. I want to introduce you to Siren. That's why everybody is here, but I do want to, her handler is Roger Lafferty, Sergeant Roger Lafferty. And if you remember, Sergeant Lafferty was a previous handler for our K-9 unit, and he transitioned well into being a handler for Siren. It was the right time, and she's a sweet girl. So I'm going to, yes, you are. Yes, you are. So I'm going to let him just tell you a little bit about her, and I'm going to grab her some ice because she's a little warm. Ice. Ice. I'll let you.
All right. Hello, everyone. Hello, council. Yes, this is therapy dog Siren. She's assigned to me in the recruiting unit. So she comes to a lot of recruiting events, comes to the Bulls games. She also goes to different substations and she loves ice. As you can see, the chief gives her ice almost every day. But yeah, we make rounds to the different substations and Durham Bulls games recruiting events. So she provides therapy to officers who just want to pet a dog and kind of takes their mind off of work and the stressful lives that we live. So she came from a place out in Charlotte called Canine Responders Academy, who got her from Lab Pups. So they trained her up and they donated her to our department.
Nice. How old is she?
She is just a year old, and tomorrow she goes and gets spayed. So she's growing up quickly. She's growing up quickly.
Well, thank you so much. For
Yes.
having- I know my colleagues want to just go pet and hug, but we've got some business and stay
I understand.
as long as you want.
Okay.
Absolutely, but she'll be back. Okay, cool.
Yeah, whenever y'all want her to come back, she'll come back.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. I think we'll get unanimous consent for that. Thank you so much and welcome, Siren.
Oh,
Appreciate what you do for us.
thank you.
Colleagues, at this time, I'm going to yield to our staff or executive staff for any priority items. And first, I'll start with our city manager. Good afternoon, Madam Manager.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, members of the Durham City Council. I do have a few priority items. The first item I have is Ms. Clapp from DSS is here to represent a recognition of Durham Emergency Communications and Durham Police Department employees regarding a recent event. So welcome.
Thank you, City Council. My name's Maggie Clapp. I'm the Director of Durham Social Services. I've been in this job for a little over a year, and every time that we have a child go missing, I don't sleep well that night. And so on Thursday, July 25th, 2024, an Amber Alert was issued for a youth that was in our custody. From the moment that our agency learned that this youth was missing, Durham Police Department employees stepped in to ensure that that youth was returned safely. Officers met with our staff at the last known location of the youth and immediately began to work to locate the youth as well as the adult that they suspected the youth to be with. Durham Police Department maintained contact with my staff throughout the evening regarding the status of the investigation. On Friday, July 26, 2024, Investigator Armstrong informed our agency that it was believed that the youth was still in Durham County. Durham County CPS Supervisor Letitia Martin and CPS Program Manager Lavelle Chesney met with officers, detectives, and investigators at a mobile command post in the community. Throughout this time, their 911 communicators shared the last known location of the adult and child based on cell phone activity. Watch Commander T. McLean, Investigator R. Armstrong, and Corporal I. Harton worked diligently alongside DSS employees to ensure that they were abreast of the situation and the status of the youth. Due to the diligent efforts of Sergeant McLean, Sergeant Schneider, Investigator Sterling, Senior Officer Broadwell, Investigator Armstrong, Corporal Harton, Corporal Day, and 911 communicators, Rose Padilla, Jennifer Carey, Dwayne McIntyre, and Ollie Wall, the youth was safely located and returned within less than 24 hours from the issued Amber Alert. The Department of Social Services and I are grateful for the partnership with the Durham Police Department, as well as the tenacity and the dedication of the employees. We truly appreciate all the efforts that were made. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Manager, before you go on to your next, would you please convey on behalf of the mayor and the entire city our gratefulness at the diligence, all those names you called, let each one of them know that this city's heart beats for them and that we're incredibly grateful for the work. Much times goes unheralded and unknown, but we're glad that you brought this as a priority item today. Thank you so much. And thank God for the safety of that job.
Thank you. I do have two additional items. Agenda item number 14, the 2024 second quarter crime report. A presentation will be made during the August 22nd, 2024 City Council work session. And agenda item number 25, U.S. Department of Transportation Federal Aviation Administration Airport Improvement Program Grant Offer 3-37-0056-070-2024 is a supplemental item that has been added. Thank you very much. That is all I have.
Thank you so much, Madam Manager. I'll entertain a motion to receive the city manager's priority items. I heard a motion in a second. All in favor? Aye. Those opposed? All right, and the chair's opinion is unanimous. Thank you, Madam Manager. We'll now hear from,
Just one moment,
Yes,
please.
ma'am.
I understand that that some of the employees that were recognized in the first item are here.
oh,
And if we can ask them to stand. please.
absolutely, please. Thank you so much. Absolutely. I don't want to put you on the spot, but can we have them each introduce, if you don't mind, coming up and just telling us who you are? If you don't mind? I want to ask any other questions.
I don't know what time of day it is. It's afternoon, good afternoon, City Council. Madam City Manager, I'm Dwayne McIntyre, and I was part of the 911 team with all my great coworkers over here. So I thank you for the recognition, and I'm glad the child is home safely.
Good morning. I'm Corporal Harton with Durham Police, of course. I'm in the Special Victims Unit in our Criminal Investigations Division. Nice to meet everybody.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sergeant Talisa McLean. I was the sergeant in District 4 that day that the call came out. So I want to accept this recognition on behalf of my squad because we worked diligently together that day to make sure that the child was safely returned.
Good evening, I'm Corporal Day. I was one of the original supervisors to respond to the DSS call, so thank you.
And also on behalf of the Organized Crime Division investigators, our selective enforcement team members that are not here, but really do truly appreciate the recognition.
Randy, you want to?
And it is a pleasure as a director of 911 communications to have part of my stars here with us today. There's a lot of stars in our organization, but these people are very outstanding to me, this staff. Of course, Dwayne's already introduced himself. I have Alicia Uten, have Jennifer Carey, and then I have Rosa Padelli, and I have Ollie Wall. Ollie was the supervisor that day. Rosa of the group there standing is our youngest member who is full-time with us, doing a great job, has less than a year with us maybe. And so we're very proud of all of them and the work they did that day in the collaborative effort with our law enforcement and with social services and all. It was a great success. These are good days to celebrate. Thank you so very much.
Absolutely. Friend, if you don't hear it often, and I'm sure you don't hear it enough, this entire city is grateful for what you do. I don't know how many ride-alongs I've done with the Durham Police over the years and have sat and listened to those calls in the 911 center. But what you do is just amazing and nothing short of heroic. And I know your names don't get called a lot, but you need to know we see you and we couldn't be who we are as a city without you. So thank you so much for just being heroes on the regular as part of the job. Thank you on behalf of the entire city. Let's give it to him again, please. Madam Manager?
That is all.
Thank you, Madam Manager. Madam Attorney, good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem Middleton. It's good to see you. Good to be with City Council today. City Attorney's Office has no priority items.
I'll now yield to the clerk. Madam Clerk, good afternoon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, and good afternoon, everyone. I did want to remind you that tomorrow in City Hall, we are having some HVAC work and the air will be off. So if you're planning on coming into City Hall, just be aware that it'll be a little warmer than usual. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just take that as advisory. Won't ask for a vote. See, the city get they power turned off sometimes too. Thank you for that, Madam Clerk. All right, that's all for priority items. At this time, colleagues, I'm going to turn to our administrative consent items and read. Did I not finish the vote? Yeah, we took the vote and then yeah, I think we took the vote on the manager and then, yeah, we took a vote. No worries, no worries. I'm going to now read the administrative consent items and our entire agenda into the record. Item 1, under administrative consent items, City Clerk's Office. Item 1, Durham Workers' Right Commission appointment. Item 2, Durham Planning Commission appointment. Item 3, Housing Appeals Board appointment. Item 4, Participatory Budget Steering Committee appointment. Under General Services Department, item 5, Durham Poet Laureate mayoral appointment. Under departmental items, City Manager's Office, item 6, U.S. Department of Transportation Federal Aviation Administration Airport Improvement Program Grant Offer 3-370056-069-0-2024. Item 7, American Rescue Plan Act ARPA Agreement with Durham Housing Authority. Right, that item is pulled. Under Community Development Department, item number 8, approval of grant agreement with Legal Aid of North Carolina, LANC, to continue administering the Eviction Diversion Program.
Somebody's mic's wrong.
And I'll be making a motion to recuse on that item as well.
We're not voting on it today. It's a work session. No, thank you for that. And who pulled item 7? Was it you, council member? Okay, all right. All right. Under Community Develop, I read number 8 already. Under General Services Department, item number 9, Interlocal Cooperation Agreement with the Housing Authority of the City of Durham to procure and install security and equipment. I'll be pulling that. Under the Human Resources Department, item number 10, Second Amendment to contract between the City of Durham and Cornerstone On Demand, Inc. for Cornerstone Learning Management SaaS services. Under Office of Economic and Workforce Development, item number 11, First Amendment to contract agreement between the City of Durham and M Cubed and Company Global LLC. Under Parks and Recreation Department, item number 12, application for Great Trails State Grant, American Tobacco Trail.
Like to pull that one?
And Mayor Pro Tem, is this the one there's one we have to vote on, right, today? Don't we have to suspend the rule today with that party?
Staff, no member of the staff has asked for a suspension of rules vote. Item number 13, purchase contract with Bliss Products and Services, Inc. for the playground and surface replacement project at Sherwood Park. The police department, item number 14, 2024 second quarter crime report. This will be a presentation from our police department. Under Technology Solutions Department, item 15, contract with LEDs Online LLC for Power Plus software as a service. Item number 16, Plotbox Inc. software as a service. Item number 17, American Rescue Plan Act ARPA project. Digital equity delivers equitable Durham. Item number 18, Microsoft Enterprise Software Licensing Agreement. Under the Water Management Department, item number 19, resolution accepting a $1 million drinking water state revolving fund lead service line replacement, no interest loan. Item number 20, 2024 maintenance of utility easements. Under presentations from our city attorney's office, there will be a presentation on quasi-judicial procedure. Very important for us as we have a matter coming up before us. We'll get that presentation today. And for public hearings to be taken up at our next full council meeting from the City County Planning Department, item number 22, consolidated annexation, Woodlands Preserve, Torridge Road. Item number 23, consolidated annexation, Woodlands Preserve, Koback Drive. Item number 24, consolidated annexation, Lee Valley. And that ends the reading of our agenda. Madam Manager, by my reckoning, the pulled items are 7, 8, 9, and 12. Do you concur? All right. And I haven't received any indication that we have any citizens matters today. All right. Colleagues, let me poll you. Do you think we can knock out the pulled items before we do the presentations quickly? Do you anticipate? Quick question, because I don't want to hinder you. I want you to be able to exhaust everything you have. But it looks like you shook your head. So we'll start with item number 7, pulled item. So our staff can get back. American Rescue Plan ARPA agreement with Durham Housing Authority, DHA, and I believe that's council members Cook and Caballero respectively.
Good afternoon. I'm going to yield to my colleague in just a minute. I wanted to ask a couple clarifying questions, and then I'm going to let Councilmember Caballero speak, and then I might have more to say after she's finished.
Sure.
Could you tell me, in our last work session, we heard this presentation of the summary of ARPA, and there was a number given to us that there was unobligated funds of $314,793.56. And my notes say that we were told that the city was recommending 305,000 about for this purpose, but the number now is down to 280, and I'm just curious about the difference in those numbers.
Good afternoon, Bertha Winbush, Deputy City Manager. The number 305 included the possibility of giving the organization administrative overhead funding, which is up to 10%. And because this is not a program, they're not doing anything outside of what they do normally, posting payments and creating payment agreements. We would not be able to provide administrative overhead costs to them. And so the number 280 is actually the actual number that would be applied to the accounts.
And is there a way for moving that roughly 15,000 to do more relief, or can we not reallocate that?
Not to more relief, because we are paying 100% of the past due balances that occurred during COVID. There is no other relief that qualifies.
I see. Okay. So these 172 households are the only ones currently on a payment plan with debt during the time frame that we are able to cover,
They are not all on payment plans.
or that
Yes.
have that we've that have
Identified
met
that
our-
have past
okay.
due balances that include COVID
Okay,
balances.
thank you.
Correct.
And so can you tell us the time frame that when COVID ended?
So we actually used March 2020 through April 2022.
Is that was ARPA designated?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
You said it was March.
2020 through April 2022. And I also have Ashanti Brown, the CEO, with DHA here, if you all have questions that you think she might be able to answer for you.
Yeah, the next question might be better for Ms. Brown, but I'll let you determine that. So my reading of this is that outside of the COVID specific timeframe, those 172 households have an additional about $400,000 of a balance rate, because I saw that the total was $696,740.23. And then we are able to only pay the part that is during that time frame you just gave us. And so there would be a remainder on all of those, or not necessarily all of them, but there is some remainder for these 172 families totaling a roughly 400,000. Is that am I?
That is not correct.
Okay.
So the original amount, the total amount was $977,657. We are prepared to pay $289,1773, which is this agenda item, which would leave an outstanding balance of $696,740.23.
Okay, so the 696 is actually the outstanding balance.
That
And
is
so, okay, so their total alleged past due is that number plus what we are contributing.
That is correct.
And so my concern here, and I'm going to just state it and then I'll pass it along to my colleague, is that for these folks, that is even larger of a remainder than I had previously understood. And my reading of this is that there's no requirement on how DHA will handle the remainder for these families. And so there was some talk about that they could potentially enter into a repayment agreement. They might already be in one, I understand, or they would be asked to pay their remaining balances. And my concern there is that folks who are under DHA, they've already had to do certifications. They are paying what they are able to pay. And so requiring them to pay an additional amount, either in a one-time payment or even as a payment plan, runs the risk of folks either not being able to follow their payment plan or not being able to pay their remaining balance. And there is no restriction that I see in this agreement that would protect them from facing an eviction almost immediately following our payment. So I'm concerned about the fact that we are going to pay this $280,000 and then people within a few months might be immediately at risk of an eviction. So that's my concern. I'm going to pass it off to my colleague, who I think might have some things to say about that as well.
Oh, go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon. Just out of curiosity, the 172 families, those were, how did we identify, or how did DHA identify those families?
The families that have a balance, a COVID balance.
Okay, but that's not all families that have a
That
balance.
is not all families that have a balance. I
Okay.
think there are 182 families that have balances.
Okay, so I would love to see the list of all families that are in arrears with DHA and what the total cost would be. And if DHA can share that, that would be great.
Hello, good afternoon. Ashanti Brown, Chief Operating Officer with the Durham Housing Authority. Currently, there are 695 households behind on their rent, and that totals approximately $1.8 million.
And then with that, could you, and you may not have this off the top of your head, and that's fine, but could you provide to council kind of within those 690, you know, who is like the most backlogged to what's more recent? And obviously not with identifying information, but just the breakdown of, you know, there's folks who obviously are in back payment between back to COVID, which we're trying to handle, but then anyone after, you know, April 2022, basically, right? And what the total amount, I mean, you gave me the total amount, but I would just love to see who are the folks who are the most far behind for the longest amount of time, I guess.
Just the basic number?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and like a breakdown of, you know,
Agent.
a percentage of, these are the folks who have had back payment for over a year or last 6 months or the last 3 months. So that's one question that I have. And then for staff, another question that I have is, to Councilmember Cook's point, I don't want to spend, so this is an excellent use of ARPA funds. I think you heard that loud and clear from all of us. What I don't want is that we use public money and then folks are evicted in the next 3 to 6 months because they weren't able to, you know, if you're already at 30% AMI and okay, we paid off part of your balance, but that didn't clear everything. And you don't, I mean, it's just, you're still not going to bring enough in. So my concern is, as Councilmember Cook's concern is, you know, we use this public money and we didn't actually really help folks get out from under it. And so that's just a question, is there a way that we can have DHA commit, like, yes, we're going to give you this funding, but these families can't be evicted?
So I would make one point, is that as of April, when we received the report from DHA, the number was 977. The number she gave you today is 1.2.
1.8.
So the number is growing. So that is a concern as we pay off these. The numbers, their balances may be different from what I have. Obviously, those would be COVID balances because that was a point in time. So I think what we agreed to is that DHA will send a letter to the residents, making them aware of this grant the city is providing to them. And would be contingent upon them coming into the office, setting up a payment agreement so that the residents at least know that they want to work with them. They want to put them on a payment agreement and have the opportunity, because some of the residents are not on payment agreements.
Yes, that's right.
And so we want to encourage them to do that. I mean, there are a lot of concerns, obviously, but we're hopeful that because we are paying a portion of their balances, that will incentivize them to want to get into agreements. Obviously, we don't know how people are going to pay or not pay after the period. So this is our best effort to incentivize them to enter into payment agreements, because we are paying a chunk of their past due balances.
And then I guess my thing is, if we're encouraging them to come in to get payment plans, that then it's also communicated to them, this is a way for you to avoid eviction. Because,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
Okay, so because folks, I don't think a lot of people necessarily know what the consequence could be, right? And so, you know, people could be avoiding a thing and there could be fear associated with it. And so even if you're offering them a good thing, they're still going to be fearful. So I think that there needs to be clear communication. Hey, come in, get on this plan, and this helps avoid an eviction.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's the part that isn't clear here, and so that's what I would like to have, I guess, additional language before Monday's meeting, so that it can be clear on our side that that is what's actually being communicated to residents.
So we can work on that, on what that would look like, the letter that would go out to the residents. Again, some of our residents, I looked yesterday, it will pay off their full balance. Some, it's a very small amount remaining. So for many residents, this is really good. But we can work on that language and I can share it with you all.
Okay, and then could we just have it as an attachment to the item?
Yes, we can do that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Councilmember Riss.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. So first of all, as the council's liaison to DHA, I want to really thank staff and my colleagues for approving this transaction, or we're going to approve it on the next meeting, but considering this approval, this is one key piece of addressing the substantial arrears, as you've heard in this conversation. I just want to give Ms. Brown maybe a chance to say more about this. I'm glad this has come before the council. This is not something that we've just become aware of at DHA. It's something that's a long-standing issue we've been working on since the end of COVID, correct?
Actually, during COVID.
During COVID, yeah. So this is something that we're very well aware of and working on. Balancing that, of course, with the fact that DHA still is considered a troubled agency, and part of that is making sure our finances are shored up. So there's a bunch of things we're balancing here. So I just want to give Ms. Brown a chance to say more about how we've been thinking about this, monitoring this, and what the kind of plan is going forward. Because I think all these things, these requests are correct, but I just want to make sure we understand the larger context here. So please.
Absolutely, thank you. So with our families that are behind on their rent, we actually are one of the few property management entities that have not pursued any legal enforcement or legal action on our families since COVID. So many of our families that are behind on their rent have not seen any type of lease enforcement since before 2019 or since 2019. And so what we did during COVID, recognizing the fact that there were so many families falling behind because of just regular issues that we all encountered, we created what we called the Fresh Start Program, where we employed 10 housing stability specialists. And we had families contacted directly by these specialists via phone call, text messages, door knocking. We sent flyers, we spammed people. They hated us as the balances were growing. And that was just to make sure that they all knew, hey, we're here to help. We understand. If you have lost your income, we do allow you to request a rent decrease based on your income. And to the point around the 30% of their income piece, HUD does have regulatory guidance regarding repayment agreements where a person can enter into an agreement up to 40% of their income, including their rent. And so the amount that they would be required to repay would actually be up to 10% of their income. They can enter into an agreement for more, but they can always adjust that anytime. And a repayment agreement does prevent eviction. And that is simply the thing that we were advising folks of since the beginning of this, is that if you are willing to work with us, we are more than happy to work with you. But we need you to contact us. We need you to come into the office. And if you don't want to talk to your manager, you can actually call this separate team that's located at our central office for assistance. And so we did that over the course, I'm going to say 2 years. And that group is still actually together now working. It's a smaller group, but we will say that we were able to get so many families applied for emergency rental assistance. And we were able to get a significant number of families into repayment agreements. And so that's how we got to where we are today.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ms. Brown. I appreciate my colleagues' questions and observations. I appreciate the heart and the spirit that's behind the questions as well. I do want to say that, prior to COVID, there were folk that were behind on their rent. And the intervention that was occasioned by the pandemic had a very particular purpose. This money was not meant to fix all of the problems that existed before COVID. Many of us in this room got stimulus checks from the government because of COVID. Those stimulus checks didn't prevent our mortgage companies or others from stopping action if we didn't pay. It was meant to help for that particular situation. So I want to, this is a good thing that we're doing with this money, but I want to be sure to frame it for precisely what it is. While we in DHA's business, we got Durham residents who we cut off water. We don't charge reconnect fees anymore, but that's within our purview. I mean, if we want to bring that type of energy to folks' problems, maybe the city council should consider, and I don't know if we can even legally do this, just saying, we'll never cut off your water if you don't pay your bill. I mean, that's within our purview. So while we're advising DHA, there's some things within our purview as well that we can get into if we want to bring that energy to it. So I want to thank our partners and friends at DHA, and I want to thank my colleagues for these very important questions around this money. But this COVID was a situation that impacted all of us. A lot of us got aid that was COVID specific, but was not framed to fix everything that was wrong before COVID came, and will still be here when this money is exhausted. So I appreciate it, and I appreciate the questions and concerns from my colleagues as well. And I look forward to the supplemental information that Councilmember Caballero and Cook have both requested. Thank you so much. Good to see you. Councilmember Cook, please.
Yeah, so just to follow up, and this might be what you're talking about, Ms. Brown, which is, I saw also in the contract that there is a 60 days that allows until DHA is forced to make the payments. There's like a 60-day period. I mean, and we've talked about, you just mentioned, of course, these amounts are going up every month as rent does. And so I'm just curious about that time frame. And I know 60 days doesn't sound like a lot, but if it's your rent, it is 2 months is a lot of that. And so was that intentionally done so that y'all could have time to communicate with people? Is that why that 60 days is in there? Or
I think I believe it's more of a saving grace, if you will, just to make sure that we can adequately contact every family to make sure that they can come in and get the assistance that they need for that time frame. Our goal is to make sure that the letters go out within the week that the money is obtained, and then to give the families the time to come in and enter into a repayment agreement.
Okay, thank you. So I have just a couple more questions. The first is, if folks will not enter into an agreement or they're not willing to participate, and that money does not get used, what happens to it?
So we had a discussion about this yesterday, and obviously that was a concern of DHA, that if they are not able to get all of the residents to enter into a payment agreement, would they have an opportunity to come back to us with another proposal? And I told them, yes, you can come back to us with another proposal of how you could use these fundings for eligible purpose.
Okay, so the money would stay housed at DHA. They would come forward with a COVID specific purpose under ARPA, and we have some time frame for that, because I know the obligation of these funds is like on a time limit. So
yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. I mean, the funds are already obligated to them as this agreement is approved. So we're on the timeline of December 31st, 2026 after that.
Okay. And I know you're just one person, but would DHA be willing to include language about if the tenants are willing to participate or are communicative, that they would hold off on filing an eviction for some specific period of time?
Absolutely.
And we could have that into that language in the
If
contract?
a family is entering into a repayment agreement, that stops all lease enforcement action.
I
They would be
understand
in
that, but I
compliance
mean-
with their lease, and so we certainly would include that link.
Okay, because like if you enter into an agreement and then you miss your extra payment the following month, right? Like then there's no indication that you're protected then from.
So if you
subsequent
enter,
activity.
I'm sorry,
Okay, that's all.
if they enter into an agreement and then they don't honor the agreement,
Right.
don't evict them.
That I'm asking if y'all would be willing to sign to agree to not evict the families who are willing to participate for some period of time, like 6 months,
Okay.
even if they failed to do their part, right? Like my concern, and we've talked about this, but my concern is that we spend this money, we help these folks, and then, I mean, not to say that it's for naught, but I'm not sure that the best use of paying off people's funds is anything other than keeping them housed, right? And so my concern is that if they don't follow the payment plan or something comes up, then they're evicted. And so that's what I'm just curious if y'all be willing to agree to a discrete timeframe to not file an eviction for the folks who are willing to participate.
Yes, we can do that based on our policy. It does account for that in our policy. So yes, we can.
Is there a policy that?
Yes, we have a repayment agreement policy,
Uh-huh.
and that allows for a person to miss a payment and to contact us, or even contact us and let us know that they're going to miss a payment.
Mhm.
And we allow that up to at least, 2 times during that period. but I can express that if a person contacts us, we're in the housing business. And so our goal is, our goal and our interest is actually to keep a person in the unit and not to evict them.
Yeah.
And so we will be more than willing to assist a family if they know that they're going to miss that payment and they reach out to us. But if they miss it without contacting us, our policy allows for 2 of
Right.
those months.
That's great to know. Thank you so much. Yeah, and Ms. Brown and I have worked together in the past, and so we have a good relationship, I think. I want to add some context, which is that though it was like a policy that kept folks housed during the pandemic, and people who are in public housing, that's often the end of the line for them in terms of a place to go. And so I think that that was really, really effective in keeping folks safe during the global pandemic, but also not having eviction filings because of DSS's requirements that there be court filings in order to access some of the emergency funding. It did keep a lot of people out of that emergency funding. And so it's sort of like a double-edged sword, but I just do want to add that context because I think it's important here that folks were not allowed to apply or they did not qualify for the funding that other tenants in Durham did apply for because they did not have that filing. Now, of course, filings never get expunged from your record ever. And so there is huge benefit to not having that filing, but I just want to add that context because I think it's important to know. And also that DHA was severely understaffed for a long time and that there were many, many reports of people calling and not being able to reach folks at the agency. And so I think that piece of it too is important because I know that y'all are willing to communicate and work with people, but it hasn't always been that folks are able to communicate with you. And so, and I know that that is different now, and I appreciate the upward trajectory, but I just think that context is important here as well. But I appreciate those extra assurances, and I really hope we can get these 172 folks, their balance is cleared up. It'd be great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilmember. Thank you, Ms. Brown. All right, item number 8, approval of grant agreement with Legal Aid of North Carolina to continue administering the Eviction Diversion Program. I believe that Councilmember Caballero.
Yes, thank you.
Good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem and council members. Keishma James, Community Development Department. We also have our Assistant Director on the line, Tanya Coleman. I believe she's going to take the lead and I'll be happy to fill in if needed.
Thank you. I just had a couple of questions just to make sure that this was a conversation that came up during our budget work last year. And so my understanding of this agreement in front of us is that the ask from Legal Aid this past year was for $1 million. And because of the way that the contracts basically lapsed into different fiscal years, they essentially got it because there was carryover funds. But moving forward, so basically as of July 1, 2025, it would revert back to that standard $650,000, which is what community development basically has programmed for Legal Aid.
I'm sorry, I thought Ms. Coleman was going to jump in, but yes, the contract ended on June 30th, 2024, and we extended it to August 31st. So you're absolutely right. There was some residual funding left on the current contract that can be rolled over into the new one. But yes, when we go back to the drawing board for the next fiscal year, then yes, that $650,000 is on the table.
Thank you. So I just wanted to raise it for colleagues. We will get to budget items, obviously early spring, but that the standard, it reverts back. It goes back to just the standard amount, which is what community development has at $650,000. And if we want legal aid to receive more, which is essentially currently $1 million, then that will have to be something that comes from council. That's all. That's my only question. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Councilmember. The next item is item number 9, which I pulled.
Good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem, members of City Council, Logan Small, General Services. Happy to answer any questions.
Good afternoon, and thank you for being with us. I understand this is pursuant to results from our PB cycle. Would you, there's, as you know, a great deal of concern about surveillance in Black communities. What are the purposes of these security cameras and what will they do? How will they help us?
So I have staff from Durham Housing Authority here, representatives. They'll be installing the project. I'll just be kind of overseeing the procurement and.
Afternoon. My name is Donnell Burke. I'm the Fraud and Security Manager for DHA. So the purpose for the cameras would be to basically combat and assist Durham PD with any kind of abnormalities and crime that's happening within the two identified communities, Cornwallis and Price Steel.
All right.
Yes, sir.
Where would the cameras be?
Currently we're using a tsunami camera. They're strategically placed where Mr. Jason
Should be
Sheets.
fair. If you just step to the mic close to me.
I'm sorry. The cameras will be strategically placed around the communities to where crime is initially taking place. So we have these tsunami cameras. We'll have 5 additional cameras that's pointed in 5 different directions. So we're placing them at a certain point of the community. We can view 5 different directions at one time.
The cameras will be operating 24/7?
Yes, sir.
Will someone be monitoring the feed live or will it just? they just be recording?
We have a 60-day backup, so no live feed, but sometimes I do have, I can monitor from home, from my phone, my device. And also we have partners with Durham PD that monitor them as well.
So the system's meant to be preventative or just to help an investigation after something happens?
Both.
How would they be preventative?
Well, they're big, huge 2 by 3 foot cameras. So if you see these cameras with black domes looking down at you, you would think twice before you act.
So the proposition is that if you know you're being surveilled, you'll act differently?
Yes, sir.
And the cameras won't send help if anything happens. They'll just capture images of things happening, correct? Okay, that's all I have. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Sir.
I actually didn't want to pull this item, but I did want to say that I'm excited to see our participatory budget citizen input on this agenda item and that it's coming to life. So I just want to again praise our participatory budget team. They did a really excellent job. I think the submissions were like 700 projects, so there was so many. And crunching all that data, figuring out the priorities of the community, putting that out for a vote. I thought that was just an amazing thing that we did. And so I'm glad to see the ball start rolling on those agenda or those priority items from the community.
Absolutely. I want to associate myself with Councilmember Cook's comments. I think you should give the people what they asked for. Item number 12, application for Great Trail State Grant, American Tobacco Trail. I believe that was pulled by Councilmember Cook.
That is me.
Good afternoon, Council, Mayor Pro Tem Emily McIntosh with Durham Parks and Recreation.
Thank you. So I just had a couple of specific questions that I thought you might be best able to answer. I know that this is not a huge amount of money, but it is still $1 million, and it on the map looks like a pretty small portion of the trail. So I'm curious about how we prioritize that. And I saw that there was some study done, and I'm assuming there's a safety issue there. But I know we have a lot of trails in the works in the city and a lot of places that money could go. And I don't know the restrictions on this grant, but it seems rather broad. So I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit about how we prioritized and maybe why the cost is so great for that segment.
I will try my best. I'm the grant writer, so I don't come up with the projects. I just write the grant applications for them. But I worked with our planning and our maintenance units in DPR, and the selection of that project was based on the 2017 trail study. So there was previous work that was done on 7.2 miles of trail, but that slope failure was not addressed during that time. And that is the highest priority item for the funds. So City Council did allocate CIP funds in this last, this fiscal year for repairs. If we don't get the grant, this is still #1 on the priority list for those funds. This would just enable us to use some state funds as well as city funds so that we could do more repairs on other areas after we finish that slope failure project.
And you will never hear me say anything negatively about going for grants. So I appreciate your work on that and all of the grant writing that you do for the city. And those were all my questions.
Thank you, council member. All right, thank you, colleagues. I think we've exhausted all of our pulled items by my reckoning. If so, and I think that is so, we'll move on to our presentations. And at this time, I'm going to welcome our chief of police and her command staff for our second quarter crime report. That's item number 14, if you're following along on the agenda. Chief, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. So as you, in previous work session presentations, I've introduced a member of my executive team. And so for this particular report, Deputy Chief Sherry Montgomery, she is our field operations deputy chief. So when you think uniform patrol, all of that is her shop. So she's going to be providing you with the second quarter report today. So thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Deputy Chief, good afternoon. Welcome. Good to see you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem, Council, City Manager Page. As Chief said, I'm Sherry Montgomery, Deputy Chief of Field Operations. Today, I'm going to present the Police Department's second quarter report that covers the 5 performance measures: Part 1 violent crime, Part 1 property crime, clearance rates, response times to priority 1 calls, staffing levels, and some recruiting highlights. Okay, first, let's look at Part 1 violent crime, which includes homicide, rape, robbery, and aggravated assault. Overall violent crime increased by 3.9% through the second quarter compared to 2023. The change is primarily due to an increase in aggravated assaults related to shooting events. Homicide is up 4.3%. Through the second quarter, there were 24 reportable homicide offenses, 22 criminal homicides, 3 of which were domestic related, and 2 negligent manslaughter. Rape is up 8.8%. Through the second quarter, there were 87 forcible rape offenses. 28% of the reported offenses occurred in prior years. 15% of the reported offenses were domestic related. 4 of the 8 clearances were reported in prior years. Robbery is down 3.4%. Through the second quarter, there were 226 robbery offenses. 74% of robberies were from persons, which is up 3%. 26% of robberies were commercial, which is down 14%. 62% of total robberies involved the use of a firearm with non-associated gunshot wounds. Aggravated assaults is up 6.1%. Through the second quarter, there were 605 aggravated assault offenses from 420 incidents. Out of all reported, 26% of the incidents were domestic related. 64% of the non-domestic incidents involved firearms. I would also like to note at the end of the second quarter, overall violent crime was up. However, year to date, we are down 2.9% in all violent crime categories except rape. This chart shows violent crimes through the second quarter over the last 10 years. Homicides are at a 10-year high, but consistent with previous 3 years. 21 of the 24 homicides this year involved a firearm. Reported rapes have trended upwards, are at a 10-year high. This could be influenced by the agency's Saki grant and associated efforts to encourage and support victims. Just over 1 of every 4 rapes reported in 2024 occurred in prior years. Robberies have trended downwards and are at a 10-year low. Just over 1 of every 4 robberies are commercial, with the remaining 3/4 being from persons. Hispanic victims have been disproportionately impacted, with 44% of individual robberies through the second quarter having one or more such victims. The vast majority of commercial robberies this year involve businesses. I believe there was a question in reference to the potential for offenders to be Hispanic during the last report. At this time, there's insufficient data to answer this question, although the ratio of incidents with Hispanic offenders was higher this year than the comparison period. There have only been 7 such cases in 2024. There were no significant incidents in quarter 2 that we consider part of the Hispanic victim trend. We believe the robberies in trend 1 from quarter 1 stopped when the persons of interest were picked up for other charges. There are no conclusions that can be made about whether there's a correlation between Hispanic victims and offenders at this point in the year. Aggravated assaults are ever-changing and have fluctuated significantly over the last 10 years. Intimate partner domestic violence incidents were slightly less represented this year, with 26%. Incidents with firearms were slightly more represented, with a 4% increase. Shooting incidents decreased by 25.1% through the second quarter compared to 2023. The number of persons shot increased by 43.8%. Most of the increase was observed in the non-fatal category. There were 458 guns seized and 315 incidents through the second quarter. This chart shows the cumulative number of gunshot wounds by week through the second quarter and the previous 5 calendar years. 2019 had the fewest gunshot wounds with 192. The most of the following year were 318 in 2020. Year-over-year declines have occurred since then. The 128 gunshot wounds through June 30th, 2024 are the most at the midpoint during the 6-year period. There's no way to predict the year-end totals at this time. Of all violent crime, 36% came from incidents where a gun was fired. Moving on to Part 1 property crime, which includes burglary, larceny, and motor vehicle theft, it increased by 5.5% through the second quarter compared to 2023. The change is primarily due to an increase in shoplifting and larceny from motor vehicle incidents. Burglary is down 0.6%. Through the second quarter, there were 627 offenses. 59% of those were from residential locations, which is down 6%. 18% of those were from retail business locations, which is up 23%. Through the second quarter, larceny is up 8.3%. Through the second quarter, there were 3,829 larceny offenses. 42% of larcenies were from motor vehicles, and that is up 14%. 34% of larcenies were related to shoplifting, which is up 17%. Of all reported, tools were the most common type of property stolen. Motor vehicle theft is down 1.4%. Through the second quarter, there were 859 motor vehicle theft incidents. 80% of the vehicles stolen, not including attempts or vehicles not registrable, have been recovered. 19% of vehicles stolen were left running unattended and have the keys left somewhere in the vehicle. Kias were the most frequently stolen vehicle make, followed by Hyundais and Honda. As with violent crime, I would like to note that while at the end of the second quarter, there was an overall increase, to date in property crimes, we are down 1.3%. This chart shows property crimes through the second quarter over the last 10 years. Burglaries have trended significantly downward over the last 10 years, with the 3 lowest totals occurring during the last 3 years. Residential burglaries are slightly lower than average this year, and burglaries to retail business are average. Burglaries to construction sites with appliances have targeted after installation were abnormally high through the second quarter. Larcenies have trended up over the last 2 years and are at a 10-year high. In addition to thefts from motor vehicles and shoplifting, those involving copper packages and construction sites are other trends that we've observed this year. Motor vehicle thefts have significantly increased over the last 2 years. While they're down slightly from last year, they are still up more than double previous years. Kias and Hyundais continue to dominate the vehicles stolen, which is a regional and national trend that started in 2022 and increased in Durham around 2023. Attempts to steal these vehicles also contribute to crime counts, representing 23% of all incidents through the second quarter compared to 4% normally. This chart shows the cumulative number of guns stolen by week through the second quarter and the previous 5 calendar years. There have been year-over-year increases ever since 2019, and 2024 is tracking higher with 268 through June 30th of this year. Of the guns stolen this year, 71% were from motor vehicles. This is a much higher ratio than what has typically been observed. Breaking the glass was a method of entry for 41% of the guns stolen from vehicles. DPD Part 1 clearance rates through the second quarter were similar to FBI annual data for 2022 in homicide, robbery, aggravated assault, and burglary, and slightly better than DPD annual data for 2023 in all categories other than homicide and rape. While the homicide clearance rate this year is lower than 2023, it is based on a smaller number of offenses, which can be highly variable and change dramatically with just a couple of changes in status. For instance, we had some clearances recently, making our year-to-date clearance rate 60%. The rape clearance rate was significantly lower than FBI 2022 and DPD 2023 annual data. Victim cooperation is a critical factor in clearing this type of offense, which can be impacted by delayed reporting. These crimes can also take time to investigate and develop evidence to charge a suspect. For example, we announced on August 3rd that an individual was charged in connection to 3 separate Durham incidents in 2022. Our year-to-date clearance rate for rape is 17.6. 88% of our violent crime cases were cleared via arrest, either by our agency or another agency serving our warrant. 12% of those were exceptionally cleared. 95% of our property crime cases were cleared via arrest, with 5% being exceptionally cleared. Priority 1 calls for service and response times. There were 4,531 Priority 1 calls for service through the second quarter, which was up slightly from 2023. Our average response time was 6 minutes, 47 seconds, which did not meet our target of 5 minutes and 48 seconds. We answered 47.6% of these calls in less than 5 minutes, which did not meet the target of 57%. Data previously shared indicates response times are negatively impacted when staffing falls below 80%. So our staffing update. Sworn staffing was at 74% at the end of June and is still currently at 74% staff with 26% vacant. Non-sworn staffing was at 85% at the end of June. It's currently 84.6% staff, 15.4% vacant. 9 new officers graduated from the Basic Law Enforcement Training Academy, number 59 on August 9th. We currently have 16 recruits scheduled to start in Academy 60 on August the 26th. Recruiting efforts are underway for Academy 61 that is scheduled to begin in February. In the second quarter of this year, we had 90 applicants, which is more than the number of applicants we have had in the second quarter last year, and it's the highest number of applicants we've seen during a second quarter in the last 10 years. During the second quarter, our recruiting unit initiated multiple marketing campaigns for recruitment, which included our collaboration with the Durham Bulls. In June, we filmed different recruiting reels and videos featuring Willie Bull and some of our officers. In those videos, Willie Bull encouraged individuals to apply for a job with the Durham Police Department. Those reels and videos will be posted on our social media pages throughout this month and next month. We are also continuing our coffee shops and local business initiative. Through this initiative, our recruiters meet with local business and place recruiting flyers in these establishments. The recruiting unit is also part of a DocuSign pilot program for the City of Durham. This program enables applicants to submit their applications prior to testing to make the process move along smoother. Recruiting has reported that has been beneficial so far. We are also researching new software to streamline the background investigation phase. As the much appreciated pay increase came at the end of the second quarter, it's still a little too early to tell the impact it's had on recruiting and application submitting. However, the recruiting unit has reported an increase in interest telephone calls and an increase at career fair attendees. There's also been an increase from ladder officers expressing interest. Hopefully by the next quarter, we'll be able to provide more information on how the pay has impacted recruiting efforts. We're also moving forward with planning different recruiting events funded by the COPS 30 by 30 grant to help our female recruiting efforts. We are continuing to build our representation of female officers as we were a member of the 30 by 30 initiative. The goal is to increase the representation of women in police recruit classes to 30% by 2030. 17% of Durham police sworn officers are female, which is above the national average of 12. We currently have 68 sworn female officers out of 395 officers. In the second quarter of 2024, we had 19 female applicants apply to become sworn police officers. That's the most female applicants we've had during a quarter since 2018. So we're continuing to see an increase in female applicants. We had one female graduate in Academy 59 earlier this month. We currently have 4 females in Academy 60, so 24% of the recruiting class is female. Our recruiting unit works year-round to recruit more female officers. They attend female college fairs, and we're continuing to highlight different female officers on our social media pages. We've also been approved for our COPS 30 by 30 grant. We're using the funding from the grant to hold 2 events focused on female recruitment and retention. One is a hiring event for female officers, and the second event is focused on retaining our current DPD female officers. Both events are tentatively scheduled for the fall of 2024. The first event, Women's Law Enforcement Exploration Day, will be held on headquarters September 21st. This is a recruiting event where we're inviting any women in the community who are considering becoming a police officer to come and learn more about the department and the different career opportunities that we offer in law enforcement. During this event, we'll give opportunities for ride-alongs and for participants to go through our simulator. The second event is the DPD Leadership Retreat for sworn female officers. It's designed to help with retention and provide professional development for our current female officers at DPD. This event will include discussions about career growth and networking. Lastly, an overview of our U visa request. During the second quarter, the Durham Police Department received 94 U visa requests. 57 or 61% of the U visa requests submitted were approved and 37 were denied. We currently do not have a backlog of U visas, and requests are processed as they come in. This concludes my presentation. Please make sure you follow us on our social media platforms.
Deputy Chief, thank you so much. You're a pro at that. You did an excellent job. Thank you. Appreciate you. At this time, colleagues, I'm going to yield to the rostrum for any questions or comments from the council. Councilmember Riss, please.
Thank you, Deputy Chief Montgomery, for the presentation. I just had a couple questions. First thing on staffing, you mentioned that we had 74% of our sworn staff positions filled as of the end of the second quarter 2024. What did that look like, let's say, a year ago? What was that corresponding number?
I don't have those numbers for what it looked like a year ago, but we can get those for you.
Is it, in your sense, a significant change, a slight change, any?
It's
a trend?
It's about the same.
About the same, okay. Thank you for that. Second question was on, if you go back to the chart about, this was on shooting incidents, January through June. Just trying to understand the math or the sort of how you calculate these numbers. So as I see on the screen, so there was a 25% decrease in shooting incidents, but you had a big increase in person shot, fatalities and non-fatalities. So does that mean there's less incidents, more people shot per incident? Is that what was going on?
That's correct.
Okay, it's not, it's awful to hear, but I appreciate the sharing the data. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Colleagues? Councilmember Freeman?
Thank you. I was just appreciating the presentation. Thank you, Deputy Chief Montgomery?
Yes.
Yeah. But yes, I would just say that I did want to just congratulate some of the folks that were highlighted in the report. I noted the West Point Leadership Program, the Women's Institute, and then all of those who received the advanced law enforcement certificates. I did want to also just make sure to highlight appreciation around a number of investigations that have yielded felony arrests on a hit and run. And then the application of tourniquets, it seems like our officers are really doing a lot of EMS support as well. And so saving lives and being able to apply those tourniquets to folks. I wanted to just highlight in District 2, that's Preston and Garcia, and then in District 4, Evans, for saving the lives that they did. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Colleagues, anyone else on my left? Councilmember Baker.
I just want to come back to clearance rates. Clearance rates for rape. You talked about some of the challenges with that kind of crime in particular, and we had, I think, a pretty low percentage relative to the FBI 2022 clearance rates in the last quarter, which has gone up. And I wanted to just hear a little bit. Would you anticipate that it would go up from the current 11.5% to something closer to the FBI 2022 number?
Well, so far, like I mentioned earlier, we've made some arrests that occurred back in 2022, so we're currently at 17.6. So I do foresee that as we are looking for the evidence, it's a little harder when it's reported in previous years because it's a little harder to find the evidence, the crime scenes, the witnesses. So it takes a little longer to make sure that those cases are solid so we can prosecute. So I do expect that that would continue to rise.
Thank you. The priority one, average response times, we are not meeting that goal. Do you think that goal is realistic? Is it an unrealistic goal? You talked about how it's difficult to achieve that goal if we are not at 80% of staffing. If we reach that 80%, do you think it's possible to get closer to that goal?
I do. When you have more resources right now with staffing being limited and the growth in the city of Durham, it's a lot more traffic on the roadways. It does delay the responses a little bit, but if you have more officers in the area, so right now they're having to come from farther places from the city to get there, which delays their response time slightly. So yes, if we had more staffing, I do believe we'd get closer to that.
Thank you. And then one of the concerning trends that I'm seeing here is, of course, the stolen guns. You talked a little bit about the percentage that's being stolen from vehicles, the Kias, Hyundais, and the trend there. What can you tell us any more about what's behind that trend, to the best of your knowledge? And are there any state laws that have changed that have made it more difficult for police departments to be able to keep that number within reason?
That's a good question. No changes there, but I think it ended up being a target-rich environment. So if they know that they can get guns from smashing windows, they're going to continue to do that. So that's why there's more smashed windows versus attempts at stealing cars. That's why it's down a little. So they're basically going for those vehicles just for the guns.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Cook, did you have anything?
I think that my colleagues have really touched on all the points that jumped out to me, but I wanted to say thank you also for that presentation. I think we all knew that this report was going to be hard to listen to. I'm like tearing up. I'm gonna try not to cry. Because we lived it. We were all here during that quarter, and it's just really hard to hear the numbers and know that each of those gun violence victims, is a person with a whole family and is a whole world to themselves. So anyway, I'm just the reason I'm not asking a lot of questions is because I'm just trying to process and again, we knew this was coming and I looked at the report ahead of time, but yeah, it's difficult. And so I want to say thank you to y'all and also to the 911 response team. I mean, we had them in the room earlier and we gave them props, but sitting in that call center night after night or day after day is also a really difficult job. And then we've got first responders, fire, as well as obviously we've got ambulance, which isn't under the city's purview, but lots of first responders. And then also, I talked about this before, but hospital staff that end up having to treat those gun wounds. And it's just the trauma, just a little pebble, and it really just, it can really ripple out in a broad way and affect a lot of this community. The whole community is impacted every time somebody is a victim of gun violence. And I think that this council has talked a lot about crime, and we know that this is something that's on a lot of people's minds. And so I just want to acknowledge that many of us, and myself included, are behind the scenes here, really working on creative solutions and ideas to tackle this, which is, I think, the number one concern on a lot of people's list, this and affordable housing, we know. And I asked the police chief last time at our last quarter report, and I've heard a lot from the community in response to that, but the main thing that we can do really is to support our youth in the community, right? Because we know that a lot of the folks that are both perpetrating and are victims of this are young people. So we've tried some tools out. We haven't found them to be effective. I think that I'm going to speak for myself and make I statements here, really looking to contribute in a way that's meaningful to the community with those goals in mind. So thank you so much for the presentation.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Caballero.
Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you for the presentation. You did a great job. As always, and I appreciate the kind of added data that you are slowly adding to the deck. It gives us some perspective on different data points. And so that's always appreciated. And I like that they're easy to understand visuals. It's helpful for the public as well. So thank you for your presentation, and good to hear that we're seeing some tweaks on the, it's been a quieter summer. I think a lot of us were really hoping that it would be a quieter summer. It was not a great spring at all. And so I think many of us were approaching summer, which is often one of our, everybody loves to be outside, and it also creates lots of things within the community itself. So it's been quieter, and I think many of us have breathed a sigh of relief, and let's just hope that that continues. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember, you had a final question?
Thanks, Mayor Pro Tem. Following up on Councilmember Baker's question about clearance rates, just one last question. I see that the motor vehicle theft clearance rate is much below the FBI's rate. Can you say more about why that's been difficult to clear those cases in Durham?
So I know it's different. Let me just find my notes. Other thefts clearance rates are much lower than the FBI coverage. These thefts are a nationwide problem. That doesn't mean it's evenly distributed across all jurisdictions. Even if someone is later found to be in possession of a vehicle, we must prove that they originally stole a vehicle. So it becomes a little bit more difficult. In addition, offenses for Durham also includes attempts. So that makes our numbers a little bit higher.
That's higher than, is that different from the way the FBI calculates it, or?
I believe so. Yes.
So we calculate, we're including more in the pool, in the sort of denominator there.
I believe that's, I'm gonna defer to Jason. Is that correct? That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, colleagues. Deputy Chief, thank you so much. I want to say on behalf of the mayor who isn't here, but he would want me to first extend thanks to you and Chief and the men and women under your command for running towards what most of us run from. There's not a day that goes by that the mayor and I don't discuss this topic about gun violence in our city. It is on people's mind. Anecdotally, this report, I guess in a scientific way, kind of concretizes what we've been hearing anecdotally out there. There's no solace or comfort in us as elected officials telling folk, well, you know, the incidents are down when the number of people that are hit go up. For any victim of crime or gunfire in this city, they don't want to hear statistics. They want to hear what their government is doing. We know that this is a national problem. There are more guns in America than people. We know that we are oftentimes hamstringed by the state and the federal government, but that does not exempt us as leaders, local elected leaders, to do everything within our power to combat this issue. I've said time and time again, it really doesn't matter how tall our buildings get, how great our restaurants get what's playing at DPAC. It will always be an asterisk. Our celebrations will always be muted because we will be judged how well we do in protecting the most vulnerable amongst us. This is a problem that you're not insulated by zip code, or if you're cloistered away in a certain area. We've had gunfire break out in our mall, downtown, on our roads, everywhere in the city. So this is a Durham problem. So I want to just, say for whatever it's worth, I think that with everything else we do, platitudes towards this is just, that's all they are, platitudes, and anything we can do as a government to combat this issue. And what is efficacy? I don't know what efficacy means. If efficacy means reducing gun violence or saving lives or making sure that the impact it can be blunted in any way that we can, because we know we've got a gun problem in America. I do want to ask about the weapons that we've been taking off of the street. I want to ask about the caliber of the weapons. I remember a couple of years ago, I forget who told me, but we were finding that perpetrators were younger and the caliber of the weapons were getting much larger. Can you talk to me about what we've been finding lately? Rocket-propelled grenades, anti-aircraft?
That's a good question. I don't think we've gotten those yet, but I do think it's about the same caliber. We are seeing the larger caliber guns. We're seeing a wide variety of all guns.
Are we finding that they are these guns that were legally bought and stolen? Are they from, do we know where they're coming from?
I don't think in all cases, because a lot of times guns that are stolen, the victims aren't providing serial numbers, so it's a little hard to trace exactly where they're coming from.
Got you. You, and I appreciate your caution in not wanting to attribute, impact to the pay raise too much. But first thing I'm gonna say, cool commercials was, some of the offers. I saw one with Loki, where the guy was showed his phone to Loki. That was pretty cool. So I don't know who put the commercials together, but I've gotten calls about how cool they are. And I want to venture to say that you said something earlier about the number of folk who have applied for this next BLET is what's the number is larger than it's been in, what was the comment you said?
We had 90 applicants during the second quarter, which is the highest we've had in the last 10 years.
Yeah, I'm going to attribute that to the pay raise. I'm going to go ahead and if not causally linked, certainly correlated to it. I'm heartened to hear about the number of female officers as well in the interest that we're getting from female officers. I see the chief has risen to her feet. Chief, you wanted to add something, please?
Yes, sir. I do just want to put just a little asterisk and say that while it's a little too premature right now to be able to, and we know to be able to say how big the impact is on our actual applications and hiring and filling the academies, we also look at retention. So we had probably close to 20 officers that were looking at leaving the department. And so the pay raise, so we can immediately say that those officers were no longer looking to leave the department. And so that's kind of what we look at right now.
Right.
And that is completely outside of separation for, just retirement or disciplinary actions.
Right.
But the retention of officers that were with us, that were looking at other agencies, we had other agencies come and look at their packets, and then the pay raise kicked in, and then there was there was a reversal of that intent.
Outstanding. I'm glad to hear that. So it is doing something thus far. I want to ask about finally I know a lot of our successes in terms of getting guns, drugs, arrests are attributed to our participation in joint task force, DEA, FBI, others. How has our staffing issue impacted our participation in those task force, or have those task force actually augmented us or been helpful because of staffing shortages? I know sometimes residents say to me, why are we working with the feds? Or I've seen uniforms or badges that aren't Durham badges or uniforms in the street. And I'll explain to them, well, we have these joint task force. But if you would give me an assessment on, is that helpful given a shortage, or does it hinder us participating in those task force, given our staffing issues?
It definitely helps, because when they're on the task force, then we get other task force members from other agencies that can come in and help with operations. So it definitely helps.
Okay. Finally, is there anything else we can do as a council in your assessment, I know rather than equipment and money, anything we need to be telling the public? Is there anything else we can do to be helpful?
Your support goes a very long way, so we greatly appreciate that.
Absolutely. All right. Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you. I do want to appreciate my colleagues' comments and just acknowledge, I don't know if it's been shared in this space or not, but I do want to, just riffing off of Councilmember Cook's comment around how the support of the youth is important, that the mayor's initial fund has been set up with, and I don't want to get it wrong, with United Way, and I think that'll be a big help in supporting those folks who are youth facing, and making sure that there are funding resources available for those who are youth facing. And I do want to make sure that we as a council express our strong support for that fund, and acknowledging that that could be a very beneficial piece to what we can do as a council for the folks who are going out, as Mayor Pro Tem says, going in a direction that we all want to avoid. And I just want to say that this is just one step in that. I think the mayor mentioned trying to raise $1 million to address some of the needs, and just acknowledging that that is a very low number. And so there will be a lot of other that'll come up. And I did want to add that to Councilmember Cook's point, I know that there are two proposals that the council has received that I've not heard anything about, and I would love to get some follow-up on around advanced peace and the gang transitional housing, and just make sure that we don't lose sight of the resources we have in our community who are trying to address the youth violence and the gun violence concerns that we have. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Freeman, and I appreciate you bringing up that initiative. I didn't want to steal the mayor's thunder, and we talked about this before this meeting, but indeed, yeah, there's a lot of folk who talk about root cause interventions in our city. Interestingly enough, over the years, we've had a number of groups and players in our public square that have said that without actually ever bringing forth a multi-million-dollar plan for it over the years. And there's been things that we've been done, and I'm glad to see now that there's meaty kind of real money being put on the table towards those things, rather than just saying no to something, actually presenting something that's funded. But with that said, and I'll end here, I want to shout out those that have, been stopping headlines for years. There are people in this city who we will never hear the headline because the headline got stopped. I mean, I've had young men come into my office and put guns on my desk, not my office here at City Hall, my other office, guns on my desk, and decided not to go do something. That's not going to make the news. And folk out here who mentor and tutor and run pantries every day in our city, whose names don't make it in the paper, or they don't make it on the news, but they stop headlines. And the mayor's fund is hopefully going to buttress and muscularize. We're not really doing anything new. We're just trying to bring support to folk who are already out here stopping headlines, and sometimes on their own resources and with their own gumption and strength. So with that, finally, thank you on behalf of the entire city for what you do. Please give our regards to the men and women under your command, and we appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing how that pay raise impacts further down the road. Thank you so much. Chief, thank you. Deputy Chief, thank you so much. And thank you, colleagues. All right, colleagues, finally, we have a really, really important presentation, particularly for our newer colleagues on the quasi-judicial presentation. We have sometimes we act like a court as a city council, and there's some things we can do and can't do in those cases that looks a bit different than a public hearing. So I'm going to yield now to our city attorney's office for our final presentation today. Thank you.
I do that every single time. Good afternoon, City Council, Mayor Pro Tem. Bo Brinsky with the Planning Department. Here with a presentation about the quasi-judicial hearing process. I'm almost ready.
We're making sure our counterparts on Zoom can see the presentation.
All right, let's get rolling again. Bo Brinsky with the Planning Department. Colleague Aaron Miles is going to give a presentation on the quasi-judicial procedure. I just wanted to sort of introduce and maybe explain a bit about why we're here and what we're doing. So on September 16th, City Council will be hearing an application for a special use permit and a major site plan that'll be considered in front of you. According to the use table in Article 5, there are a few limited uses that require special use permits. These are described, and I want to use this language because I think it's very helpful. Special uses within zoning districts are considered to be uses which are appropriate in a particular district, but because of their potential for incompatibility with surrounding uses, they require individual review. The most common example of this would be like a daycare center or a place of worship in a residential district. Those are examples of minor special use permits. that are heard by the Board of Adjustment. There are major special use permits. These are typically especially noxious uses. Those go to City Council, and there are transportation special use permits, which are heard by City Council. Those are required when a development is expected to have more than 600 daily peak trips. When these use permits are required, a major site plan is reviewed by City Council, and that is an administrative approval. So that is why we're here, as one of these consolidated cases will be on the September 16th agenda. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council, and Madam City Manager. My name is Aaron Miles. I'm with the City Attorney's Office, and I'm going to be talking to you about the very exciting quasi-judicial procedure. So there are three types of approvals that happen in the governmental space. Legislative approvals that you all see regularly, those are your zoning decisions, your annexations, are set that you don't see as often, you don't get to see except for when there's a major site plan, is administrative approvals. Those happen behind the scenes with all of our amazing staff members. That is a non-discretionary, check the box, did you do this? You get it type of approval. And then where we're going to live in this presentation is that quasi-judicial procedure, which is an evidentiary, discretionary decision based hearing process that you all are going to go through with the applications coming before you on September 16th. There are, so wait, go back, sorry. The Board of Adjustment and the Historic Preservation Commission regularly hear quasi-judicial hearings. So there are boards who do this regularly. And so this is a regular process that happens monthly. You all just only get to see them when they are major special use permits or transportation. Next. I've already given a little bit about administrative decision-making, but again, it is very compliance-based. It is non-discretionary, and this is generally what staff does. Legislative, you are very, very familiar with this process. This happens at almost every city council meeting. You get to speak with the community gets to weigh in, you get to ask questions of the developers and provide comment, as well as this also occurs when you're doing code provisions, approving plans, and other matters. So quasi-judicial decision-making is a statutorily defined process. It is a decision involving the findings of facts regarding a specific application of an ordinance and exercise of discretion when applying standards of the ordinance. So this is, again, an evidentiary-based decision. So as I stated, the Historic Preservation Commission and the Board of Adjustment see these regularly. HPC receives them as a certificate of appropriateness when weighing our historic criteria. Board of Adjustment uses the UDO when they're applying it to variances, administrative decision approvals, reasonable accommodation requests, and then minor special use permits. And then you all get to see them again with a major special use permit application, like the one coming before you on September 16th. So when it comes to the quasi-judicial portion of this, ex parte communication, which means speaking to individuals or anyone about the matter before the hearing, is not permitted. The decision has to be made based off of the evidence and the testimony presented at the specific hearing. So the staff report will be posted prior to the hearing, but you are not permitted to speak to anyone about the information that is provided. You can drive by the site, for example, but you cannot speak to anyone at the site if you wanted to take a look at it. So you're sitting as both the jury who's weighing the evidence and then also as the judge who's presiding. So you're presiding for findings and facts, and you're also sitting there to make sure that the procedure is followed appropriately. So when it comes to special use permits, within the UDO, it does require that you provide specific findings. And those findings are, one, that the action is in harmony with the area and not substantially injurious to the value of the properties in the general vicinity. Two, in conformance with all special requirements applicable to the use. And 3, will not adversely affect the health or safety of the public and will adequately address the review factors identified below. And I'll go through those factors on the next slide. I will note the beginning of the hearing, staff will provide a staff analysis of both the findings and the review factors for you all. And then additionally, at the close of testimony, staff will then provide a recommendation on the application. So when it comes to the factors, so these are the factors that will be weighed during the hearing. Circulation, and it looks at, and I'm going to read directly from the UDO so you have context. It looks at the number and location of access points on the property, proposed structures and uses, with particular reference to automotive, bicycle, mass transit, and pedestrian safety, convenience, traffic flow, and control, access in case of fire in fire. So I'm not going to read each one of them, but I just wanted to kind of give you an example of you are weighing some different information on each of these particular factors. And again, staff will be providing their analysis prior to that hearing. So again, evidence is going to be presented. The applicant will have an opportunity and any opponent. So at the beginning of the hearing, the mayor will be provided a script and he will read that the staff will go first. The applicant will have the opportunity to put on the case because it is their burden to meet those factors and provide evidence for those findings. And then any opponent to the matter may have the opportunity to put on evidence as well. The city attorney will be present to help with any evidentiary questions. And the rules of evidence apply in that the clerk will be swearing in all witnesses to testify truthfully. Witnesses must have standing to testify. And there is a specific statute in 160D which provides that what that standing is, and that it falls under whether or not someone has a personal ownership interest, i.e. a lease, an easement in that particular parcel, that the applicant is the one before the body or possibly has maybe some special damages or can show that they would be harmed in some way by this application. So that's kind of the standard and that standard has to be met by the individual providing that testimony. And witnesses are subject to cross-examination by both the applicant, if they are the opponent providing that specific testimony, or by an opponent if they are the applicant. Evidence has to be material, competent, and substantial. And what does that mean? Material is it relevant to the general findings and review factors that you all are weighing? Whether or not that evidence is competent, is it admissible? Does it go to the relevance factor in that material evidence? And is it substantial? Will it adequately support the findings of fact that has to be a part of the decision in either approving or not approving a specific application? In these type of hearings, hearsay evidence is not admissible. Hearsay is an out-of-court statement offered for the truth of the matter asserted therein. Witnesses must be present to testify, and they have to be available for cross-examination if necessary. General information downloaded from the internet should not be admitted. And again, you're looking at the material, competent, and substantial evidence. Is it relevant? Is it admissible? And is it adequate to support the findings of fact in order to make the decision? In special use permits, there is an opportunity for opinion testimony by experts. Those areas will fall into whether or not an impact on the value of neighboring property owners. For example, an appraiser would be an expert who could testify as to that information, in addition to traffic impacts. Someone who is an expert in those type of impacts and those type of studies would be someone who's available, and potentially noise. So in order to provide that type of testimony, that person would need to be qualified based off their education and experience, and then tendered as an expert and accepted as an expert by the mayor. So in making the determination, if an applicant offers that council, offers the evidence that council finds to be material, competent, and substantial with regard to the general findings and review factors, then the applicant has met its legal burden and application must be approved. However, opponents can similarly offer evidence, and if council finds that an opponent has presented material, competent, and substantial evidence that persuades council that the general findings or the review factors are not satisfied, then council should deny that application. In making the determination, council must decide upon the evidence presented at the hearing and the application of the evidence to the general findings and review factors, what that determination will be. And liking an application or not is not relevant in a quasi-judicial matter, and nor should it be a part of council's ultimate determination in determining an application. You can approve with conditions. UDO 3.9.7C, the governing body may place conditions on the use as part of the approval to assure that adequate measures are associated with that use. And the condition should be a part of the major special use permit approval. The applicant must agree to those conditions on the record prior to conditions being adopted in the motion for approval. So before any condition can be put on a particular application, that applicant will need to affirmatively agree to that on the record prior to it being added into the motion. And the final determination, after conducting the public hearing, hearing the recommendations of the planning director, transportation director, or designee, the governing body shall either approve the request with conditions, deny the request, or continue the hearing to a date certain. These matters can be appealed if an applicant or an opponent, they're allowed to appeal by filing a petition of certiorari with the Durham Superior Court. That concludes my presentation. If there are any questions.
Thank you so much for a very concise presentation. I'll yield now to my colleagues. Any questions on this important function of the council? Councilmember Cook.
Right. Thank you, Attorney Miles. I do have a couple of questions. I was first wondering about, you don't have to go back to the slide, but you were talking about what evidence is allowed, and there was a hearsay is not allowed, and some other things that were noted. Are those issues that have to be raised by the opposing party? Are we, as the folks hearing this, are we able to say that something is hearsay and not consider it? I'm curious because I've only seen it happen in an actual court of law where you have an opposing counsel that is able to object to hearsay, and oftentimes you'll have a judge that will say, I'm not considering this because it's hearsay.
So in this case, because you were sitting as both the jury and the judge, it can happen both ways. So an opponent, yes, could raise that this is information is hearsay. Additionally, because you all are also sitting as the judge in the matter, if it is hearsay information, say a report that is being submitted and that individual is not present to testify that support, that would be hearsay, and you all will be in your purview to not allow that evidence to be admitted as part of your consideration.
Wow, that's a high bar for people who haven't taken a class on what hearsay is, I think, but
I would agree.
yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's, I find that even my colleagues don't always maybe understand what hearsay is. So that's exciting. Okay. My other question is about the burden on the determination slide. This is like different than what I'm used to. So there's no like, this material, competent, and substantial with regard to the general findings, like that is the burden of proof? Is that how or is there like preponderance of the evidence sort of standard? Like, do we have standards that underlie this? Like,
so I will go back to the findings slide. I don't know. Can you pull the presentation back up? So you're using the evidence that material, substantial evidence, and applying it to the findings, the evidence that has been presented, and applying it to the findings to determine if to make these determinations, these 4 determinations. And it is a totality of the circumstances to everything that's been presented during the hearing and has been admitted into evidence. Do all of those things taken together meet these 4 findings?
Okay, but there's no like actual standard that's designated because I would imagine it's not black or white in terms of like whether it meets it or it doesn't, right?
No.
Okay. So this is just a,
It is a subjective process, which
Okay.
is why we go through this training to explain in what instances that evidence will be presented, what can be admitted, and then what you all are weighing when reviewing these type of applications.
Okay. Thank you. Those are my questions.
Councilmember Baker, please.
Yeah, I've been a planner for almost 15 years and I've never participated in a quasi-judicial hearing. So it was just a matter of time. I knew this day would come. My only question is regarding conditions. Can we expect the planning department in its recommendation to offer recommended conditions, or is that something that we should, and potentially we could come up with conditions anyway, but is that something that we should anticipate thinking about during the hearing?
I'll let Bo take that one.
Yeah, typically, yes. And just as an example, our most common condition, a lot of times with special use permits that are heard by the Board of Adjustment, will say that the development should be substantially consistent with the application that is put before you in terms of the site plan. And so a lot of times that would address a lot of the details that the applicant has provided to help meet those review factors, whether it be, the location of the parking or location of the lighting, size of the building, things of that nature. So that's the most common condition that we've seen. Obviously, at times there are other conditions, whether it be hours of operation or additional buffering, things of that nature.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman.
I have a question. Did I understand the answer? So your question was, will staff propose conditions? And I'm not, so that your answer is?
At times, yes. I'm trying not to speak about any individual case.
Yeah.
So
At times.
Yeah.
Okay. My question is more about, and also this is my first hearing as well. So my question is about the process. So I understand the evidence is presented by both the opponent or the applicant and opponents. Are there often attorneys present to?
Yes, they're generally in these type of hearings, there will be attorneys present, at least for the applicant. And oftentimes, if there is an opponent, they will bring an attorney, or there may be individuals who are representing themselves as an opponent.
And so then the process of like, if witnesses are subject to cross-examination, the attorneys are the ones cross-examining, I assume? In
Yes.
most cases, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And then unlike our typical council meeting, so we're as in the role of jury and judge both, right?
Yes.
We're not really asking questions. We're hearing, right? We're listening.
You can ask questions, yes. So you do have the opportunity during the applicant will put on their case, and then you can ask questions throughout that hearing process to see as to whether or not to make sure that they meet those findings that you have to meet. So yes, you do have the opportunity to ask questions.
But it's around sort of like meeting those standards. It's not sort of probing, right? It's just like asking more like factual questions.
Yes, and whether or not the standards are being met. Yes.
Gotcha. Thank you.
And I will add, that's also where the conditions may come in. So through the questioning, say you're looking at a particular factor, say like noise, or that's where the business hours may come in, right? Because that would affect maybe a neighboring property. So that's the example that Bo provided. That's where those conditions may come up during those questions during the hearing.
Excellent question. Colleagues, Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask, I'm just trying to understand if there's been any update or changes to the way in which an opponent's timeline is kind of balanced. So I understand that the applicant is probably already in process, but is like for the opponents in the community, are there, or is the neighborhood aware of what's happening?
So this is a public hearing, so it does go through the traditional public hearing process. There are mailings that go out there. It is posted as well on the site.
But not for the hearing. So, and I only know this based on the case that I had with the Board of Adjustments, and the quasi-judicial hearing didn't allow for my neighborhood enough time to actually get an attorney in place who could actually be the one to ask the questions and to make sure that the community was getting essentially its questions answered before the Board of Adjustments approved or denied the case.
Like an advocate for the community.
Exactly. So I just want to make sure that if there's anything, I don't know what we can do as a city to make sure that that's in place so that if there is a community advocate in place, or if there needs to be a community advocate in place, like how much time are we giving the community? Because the hearing is not enough. The notice of a hearing is not enough time.
Yeah, that, council member, that's a great question. We recognize, and I think that answer was adequate in terms of the timing, but we do recognize there is a bit of an advantage given to the applicant in this realm because they know they're coming forward with the application. And if I'm a neighbor, a concerned neighbor and an opponent, I'm only finding out whenever that notification occurs. And so I think you're absolutely correct. And so for that reason, we have reduced some uses that require use permits in some instances because as I started out the presentation, sort of this is allowed, it depends, right? So we want to be a little more transparent with the community on some uses. And as we go, I know you guys are already tired of hearing me say this, but as we're looking at the UDO rewrite, this is also something that we're going to be reviewing when we go through our use table. Just because we recognize that the use permit process itself, or even the variance process, doesn't give equal timing to both the applicant and the opponent.
Colleagues, anyone else?
Just,
Go ahead.
just making sure that we're all clear that there is a remedy that we could look at and trying to address it. And I just want to make sure that if there's a possibility of figuring out how to make sure that the community has a chance to even know before the hearing, like, I don't know what that looks like, but I think our city attorney might be the best person to answer that question. And I'm sure it wouldn't be today. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Thank you, colleagues, for excellent questions. I think having gone through a few of these, I think the last one was North Carolina Central for their was it their new student center? I think may have been the last one, and before that, was it? Yeah, we can count on one hand the number of times we've done them. But I think to Councilmember Freeman's point, we, insofar as we're directed to grant it if they meet their burden, we become the community's voice. It's unlike, a regular public hearing. We're not asking for affordable housing units. We're not asking for donations to the education fund. These quasi-judicial hearings, it's interesting. It's kind of a paradox because they're intimidating by virtue of the veneer on them. But I actually find them a little easier, less stress on me because you're either going to meet the burden or not. And the folk who come in, the attorneys that usually come in they know what they've got to do. So they'll bring their traffic impact studies. They'll bring their experts on environmental impact. They'll bring their experts on real estate, how's it going to impact. So, a lot of the burden is on them to come and meet their burden. And it's not just a perfunctory checking of boxes, but for us, we've got unlike in other matters that come before this council, we've got kind of a clear-cut standard as to what needs to be met. And we are obligated to grant if they meet it or not, if they don't. So, I guess I say that to say, with however many under my belt, not a whole lot, I'm not an expert at it by any measure, but I've been through a couple of them that you can just take a breath and we'll get through it. And if the attorneys do their job, they know what's at stake. If they come in and do their job, then it'll make ours a whole lot easier. If they meet the standard. If they don't, it'll make it easier also to say no. So yeah, I do want to say for the record to the staff, I want to alert staff, whether he likes it or not, I'm going to make sure the mayor gets sat down and goes through this primer as well. So I want to alert the staff that we're gonna commandeer his schedule and make him sit through it. If you're listening, when he gets back. So I just want to alert staff that we'll be making sure the mayor gets his primer as well. Colleagues, anything else?
If I can just add, I just wanted to provide one more comment regarding Councilmember Freeman. We at Board of Adjustment, we have had instances where an opponent has come and raised the exact concern that you have, and the Board of Adjustment has continued the case to allow for those opponents to to have those experts, to have that attorney in place, so that we do recognize that concern, and we have done that in other instances to allow for that time.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I think that's why I'm bringing it up, because I do know that we are the judge and jury in the case. And I mean, I'd love to think that I know more than I know, but that's not the case. I can't tell you what the health and safety of a neighborhood, what the impact will be based on, you know, the witnesses that come before us without the input of those people that live in a community. And the way that the system is structured is to prevent them from actually doing just that. And so I do want to just highlight that for my colleagues, because it sucks. That's the best.
No, no, absolutely. And listen, I appreciate, amen to everything you're saying. And I appreciate the spirit of which you're coming. I'm just simply saying in these particular cases, if they meet the standard, you know, whether it's noise or light or whatever, and they produce evidence that's credible, that they're dealing with light, they're dealing with noise, we approve. I mean, that's legally. But I appreciate what you're saying, and we definitely want the community to be aware and just to be as transparent as possible. Councilman Caballero, sure.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to thank staff and just say I look forward to, I know that this already happened because DPS was in a minor special use permit process, and they specifically asked to be moved to a rezoning process around some of the issues that they've had with neighborhoods wanting more input with school buildings. So we've already seen movement, and I'm glad that planning department is looking at the list of what qualifies and what doesn't with our UDO. So I just want to lift that up as an example to Councilmember Freeman's point, where there has been movement in that needed movement exactly for what we're raising today. So again, thanks for the presentation. I'm gonna have to go back and remember where the other one was, because it was central and I can't remember the other one, but
Was it Northern High School?
no, because it was that was where we got, that was a minor, but that's where we got all the
Something, I
emails. That's
remember.
what changed the process there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm gonna have to go back and figure out which the first one was, but yeah, even as a council member, I remember being like, oh, this is different. So I appreciate the presentation from our presenters today. Thank you.
We were aided by the constraints that were on us. Go ahead, Councilman.
Just one more. So when it comes to decision time, are we gonna have our clickers? Is that what this looks like? Like we do on a usual vote on the council, or?
So there would, after the motion, yes, you would then make a vote at the end of the hearing.
But then is it like one of those, because you said there's 4 options, either approve the conditions, turn down, or continue. So is that what we'll have on our, like, what are our,
So
or
that,
will be clear at that time?
that would be clear in the motion. So the
Okay.
motion language would
Okay.
either have, it would be an affirmative motion. But if there are conditions, those conditions would be added to the motion language. And that's what you all will be voting on.
Colleagues, anything else? Thank you so much, Council. Good to see you. Good to see all of you. I think we've exhausted our published agenda for the day. If that be the case, nothing else on my colleague's mind, I'm going to turn to the city manager to settle the agenda. Oh, I'm sorry, the clerk. My bad. The clerk's report. Sorry, Madam Clerk.
Problem. Thank you, presiding chair. I've got 4 sets of nominations. The Durham Workers' Rights Commission appointment for the category of low wage is Jesse E. Vaughn. For the Housing Appeals Board appointment for the category of at-large alternate member, Jenna K. Hawkins. Then there are 2 that have not reached consensus. The Durham Planning Commission appointment. There is a tie between Tai Hoon and Khalila Kareem. 2 each, and then Mitch Heath received 1 vote. Councilmember Freeman didn't vote.
Turn your mic on, please, Councilmember.
I think I submitted it after, but I picked Tai Hyun and Orland Thomas. Was that what you were?
Okay, for Tai Hyun, we now have 3 votes for Tai Hyun and 2 for Khalila Kareem and 1 for Mitch Heath.
Does the mayor?
Okay, all right. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And for the final one, for the Participatory Budgeting Steering Committee appointment At-large category is Orlando R. Thomas, and that's the end of my report.
Thank you so much, Madam Clerk. Thank you, colleagues. Madam Manager, now I will turn to you to settle the agenda.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, members of the Durham City Council. I have for your agenda at your next city council meeting, consent items 1 through 20 and item 25, GBA public hearings, items 22 through 24.
Can I ask a question just to clarify? Do I need to pull number 8 off of the consent agenda? This is what I was trying to do so that I can recuse myself so that I don't have to recuse myself on the entire consent agenda.
You can do that, Monday.
Yes, so I would like to pull that item.
Okay. Yeah, you, either way, yeah, we can put it on GBA.
As a restatement for consent, I have items 1 through 7 and items 9 through 20 and 25, GBA item 8, and GBA public hearings, items 22 through 24.
Okay. And Councilmember Cook, that evening, if we don't say it, whoever's holding the gavel, would you just remind us that night on the record that while you're not voting? Thanks much. Appreciate it. All right. With that, I will entertain a motion to settle the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Chair's opinion, it's unanimous. And I think that brings us to the end of our agenda. It's August 22nd, 3 p.m. We are adjourned. Thank you all. God bless Durham.